going to go through some topics that I think really get to what's the future of marine retailing. And at the end, hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. So as we go along here, just save your questions, and at the end, we'll hopefully get to those. My first question is for Jerry. I'm hearing concerns from dealers and OEMs that the inflated manufacturer suggested retail prices shown on OEM and dealer websites are scaring online shoppers away, and that dealers are not even getting a shot at them to make a deal. Do you share this concern? And if yes, what should be done about that?
All right, well, first of all, thank you for being here. And I've been in industry for 35 years. Steve and I have something in common. I started my career at Chris Craft, and I think I told you that once before, and been in retail now for 35 years. And I totally agree with that question. I think it's a complicated answer. I think it goes back to even trade values. Comparing our industry to automotive, I think we have a very fractured way we go about trying to establish ACVs. And you know, our organization may ACV a boat at a given price, and then the dealer down the street gives that same person, you know, $10,000 more on the same trade. And it's like, how do we stay competitive? How do we make sure that we're not offending the customer when there's that much variance in ACV values? But the bottom answer, first of all, I think in an aspirational industry, which we're in, it's not a commodity. Just like luxury cars are different than what I call entry-level cars. There's more margin, there's more cost into taking care of that customer. And then there's really, when you get into the more luxury side of marine, there's no two boats alike. So trying to compare pricing. But I do believe, I think Marcus Sheridan says, call for prices, giving the middle finger to our customer. And it's harsh, but I totally agree, that's what it is. And I think MSRP is second to that. So trying to find common ground that we can, Spader, if you all been through Total One management, it talks about survival net. And it's a race to the bottom if we can't have some commonality between what dealers are doing, and I believe all manufacturers want their dealers to be profitable, and we need to be profitable if we're going to be able to serve our customers at a high level and be sustainable. But somehow we need to find method to the madness that a professional dealer is going to have similar ACVs on trades, and then we can not over allow some crazy amount that scares the customer off, and that we can up front have something that's much closer to a transaction price. And I think that's where there's a lot of disparity today.
Is it fair to ask the MRAA to give us a recommended structure on that? Or how do we get from here to where we need to be?
I agree. Somebody in the industry needs to take a lead. There's different manufacturers that are trying to carve a path. Like one example was Tracker Marine. However, Tracker Marine is much more the commodity side of our industry. And when you get away from that, it changes quickly. So I think having our MRAA take a lead would certainly be helpful. And I know there's different manufacturers that absolutely want to be involved to try to create something that's sustainable, that dealers and manufacturers can both agree on are healthy.
Any panelists want to?
I just wish we had more industry resources to us that would allow us to
come up with a better solution as far as trades go. I mean, when you look at AI today and the things that it's doing in terms of producing information in regards to automotive, housing, we should have the same foresight in marine to allow that information on these trades that are being sold in the open market and giving us that intelligence so that we can put a better number together with the information that's available in AI. And I think that there's something there in the future. Obviously, someone needs to spearhead it to help us get there.
I think, Steve, it's great stuff you're talking about, but our industry's got so fractional. Like you have brokers that are selling for certain prices, you have dealers selling for certain prices. So if we could find an avenue or a channel to capture what true values are, what things are selling for, would be phenomenal. Obviously, in the car industry, I think you have like storm damage, and then you just have normal cars that are condition, wear and tear, where the boat has so much more variable to it. So it's a bigger challenge. But if we were able to get closer to strike price or sale price in the beginning, then you wouldn't be doing the over allowance. So it's kind of like a chicken and the egg, right? So where do we make this leap and how do we do it? But I think transparency today is so important. And now we're going to have computers and bots tell us what transparency should be. Or there was a RV article, or RV team that you guys work with. They were talking about how AI told them what time of year to buy a Class A motorhome. What's the best time of the year? Where's the biggest incentives? Where's the biggest opportunity? And that's completely out of the dealers and the manufacturers' hands. That's just out there on the web. So definitely, it's an opportunity.
Kim, we're living in a buy it now digital world. Everything has been Shopify'd in the consumer's hands. There's only one boat manufacturer that offers buy it now, no haggle pricing, and as Jerry said, it's Tracker Marine. Consumers can buy a boat and pick it up through the closest dealer. So no one's making any effort to disintermediate the dealer. The dealers are an important part of the equation. They're needed to help the customer use the boat, commission the boat, get it off the truck, store the boat. Dealers have a pivotal role, yet the buy it now technology is all around us. How should marine dealers be thinking about whether or not they need to offer buy it now on their websites?
Well, we had a recent scenario. It's not a practice that we do at my dealership, but we had a boat that we mistakenly ordered, not for our market, as a bay boat. If you follow me, I'm more like high performance center consoles, luxury center consoles, yacht tenders. So it's a bay boat that didn't really fit our model. We had it in inventory for probably over a year, and we couldn't get rid of it. And so finally Cyber Monday, Black Friday came, and we just put it out there, buy it now. We tested it out. We hit hard on social, newsletter, email, and all of a sudden it was like the boat was like the hottest thing on our floor. So we're gonna look into that. I think it's great if you've got a piece of inventory that you can't move, put a no haggle price out there and see what happens and market the heck out of it, and it worked for our dealership. So we're really gonna start doing that moving forward.
Do you recommend that OEMs loosen up their national advertised price policies to give the dealer more flexibility on doing that, or how is that going to work?
Well, the brands that we represent don't really have their pricing on their websites. Contender Boats we're the second largest dealer for Contender. They do not advertise price on their website. So for us, we're going to try that. We're going to put a national advertised price out. Mindy Dollar, who's my sales manager, is going to try that starting tomorrow. We'll see how that works, but we're going to put it out there and say, okay, starting at, base boat, starting at. So maybe we should all try something, where we get the phones to ring, and then from there we have to evaluate your trade. What does your trade look like? That's a big thing as we were talking about. But we quote MSRP all day long, and then we do not negotiate until we know 100% that there's no trade involved. If there's a trade involved, then we go back to square one, because it's just that's what it's all about. The trade can really sink a deal.
But Eddie, that flies in the face of what you said a minute ago. Customers are demanding transparency. We are, in our lives, we want transparency. When I sniff non-transparency, which is starting from, or nicely equipped at, or it's a turn off. I mean, sometimes the roller shade comes down. So Eddie, how do we?
I think Steve, we have a great case study in COVID that supply got short, demand went up, and we were selling boats buy it now. People were calling saying, is this boat real? Is this listing real? Is it in stock? Show me the equipment, I'll wire your money tomorrow. So I think to your point about manufacturers and OEMs getting closer to retail, if we could manage field inventory, and I know it's right there with trade over allowances in my mind, but we have this cycle of too much inventory, not enough inventory, keep people working, not keep people working. And is there something that, you know, maybe Tesla's out now and there's tons of inventory out there, but if we could manage together field inventory, the channel, the supply chain. You mentioned you guys had a phenomenal Viking show, which is mostly in the barrel still, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's still to be built.
It's still to be built. If somehow we could get that model a little tighter from making our commitment, buying all these boats and then sitting on them, and then that changes the buy it now. We got to make a deal, forget transparency or whatever it might be. So that's an opportunity for both.
I mean, for sure in the future, if there were enough buy it now orders to keep a backlog at the manufacturer and little or no inventory at the dealer, that's a flywheel that spins nicely. And the manufacturer would slow down when the buy it now orders contracted.
But to Kim's point, like if you have high margins and they don't have a trade, you're going to give away basically your trade over allowance in the beginning up front because there is no trade. That's where I think we need to get more consistent, get closer to a strike price. But again, you got to get on that cycle to say, okay, now we're going to sell at this margin. So trade over allowances in 2 years will only be this. And that's, you know, it's tough for people to sit down and wrap their head around as a dealer. So, and carrying cost, inventory, you know, money's not getting any less expensive yet for us. So it's a challenge.
Definitely a different consumer market today. You know, the buyer today is much different than he was 4 years ago. And, you know, again, they're trying to control the market. They're trying to control what you're going to pay. As you said, money's more expensive today. So they're taking in all these variables and trying to get down to what their strike price is. And they're being very, very aggressive. We're seeing it on all aspects, whether it's on a new boat purchase or even our trades. It's been a roller coaster.
How can there be a more homogeneous opinion of what a trade is worth? Jerry mentioned big variability on what on the trade price. How can that come together?
Our brokerage channel is really the key for us, is putting that late model trade out there with the rest of our brokerage product, and it's worth what somebody will pay. And instead of waiting on a new boat and waiting a year or 18 months, we'll put a recent trade out there, late model, trade, and it'll compete very well in the marketplace.
But when you're valuing that trade, how do you deal with the fact that another dealer in town may give them another value for that trade that's 10% higher?
I think it's all about who you're buying from too. You know, I think that still plays. You know, if you got a dealership that you're working with that doesn't have the support, and they don't have a service yard, they don't have the equipment, they don't have the ability to manage your purchase, then at that particular point, are you going to buy from that person that's there for you after sale? You got to take that into consideration, and that's a value that we forget about when we're out there selling.
I think, Steve, too, with that, right now we're up against competitors that have very, very large incentives to sell inventory. And we just so happen to do business with, in my opinion, a little bit more conservative companies that don't have that big pool of money for every deal, which that usually will kick into a trade. Yeah, normally that extra margin's going towards the trade, which is over allowance, which again keeps this thing. You never get off this cycle of having to have high MSRP and giving big money back on the trade. It's a mindset at the end of the day, but it's something we got to work towards.
Yeah, I think one more thing, like to me, if you have any car, luxury car, normal car, you pretty much know what it's worth on trade, right? You can go online in any car, you can have a BMW or something, and it's going to be worth X. And it's consistent across the board. And you're probably not going to go buy a car based on that price. It's our, back to your talk, is it the dealer? Do I like the dealer? Are they going to take care of me? What's their reputation? Do I trust them? On and on. And I think that's where we're so fractured right now is, hey, I like you better. I like your boat better, but we're 10 grand apart on trade. We're 20 grand apart on trade. And we're like, you're kidding me, because we feel like we're being very generous on that trade number. And then typically it's a unscrupulous dealer taking some type of practice that's going to lead them out of business at some point, which we've just seen in our industry, some big dealers going out of business for some practices just like that. And I think if we had somebody leading the way, that the consumer could go online and say, hey, this is a fair market value for my trade. And it's going to be more difficult when you get into luxury yachts and things like that. But I think it would go a long way. And then if we were to stick with that, that then in turn would be the chicken or the egg of getting our listed price much more in a transactional way where we can still be healthy, but have something that's more fair market value.
You know, there's a lot of security analysts that walk the boat shows, and one of the things they like to report on is the discount activity off of MSRP. So the boat show price in relation to MSRP. And after Fort Lauderdale, Tristan Thomas Martin, who's an analyst at BMO Capital Markets, wrote an investor note after Fort Lauderdale, and he said, our checks indicated that the average discount at the show was minus 17% for model year 2026 products. So that's a boat show special price that a typical dealer was offering before any kind of conversation started. And personally, from walking around the show, I thought that was a pretty good number. Is that a natural starting point? If you can walk into a boat show and buy a boat at 17 off without having a discussion on trade value, should our websites reflect those kinds of discounts as a way to take a first step of transparency towards that? Eddie, what do you think? Because you heard Marcus yesterday.
Yep.
I don't know how many of you heard Marcus yesterday. Transparency, price. The call for price is the middle finger.
I think, Steve, for me, in 40 plus years in the industry, I'd rather see us get tighter on what the MSRP is long term than giving huge discounts off of MSRP.
Lower the headline price, lower the spread.
I think the challenge we have in our industry, since I've been in it, it hasn't grown. It kind of just, it pulses like a heartbeat. It gets a little bigger, sucks back in. And I think part of it is how we do business, the practice of how we do business. So if we can, like right now when we order our 26s and we're trying to wrap our heads around, I was talking to the guys from Maryland there, the boat is $82,000 more a model year newer because they updated the boat. Well, the market's not going to understand that. No matter how nice the upgrades are, and if they don't get an opportunity to go see the boat, it's still just way out of line from an expense standpoint. Versus the boat went up 6%, and the customer can see that through portals, through advertising, and so forth. To me, is a more palatable way to do business. Versus, okay, well, let's leave that new model way up there, and we got 3 of these 9 currents over here. We're going to knock 22% off those. So I think we just need to get somehow more consistent. And you know, talking about autos and Highline, it's amazing, but they do have auctions. They have data that's reported out hourly. I mean, I have a client that's a Mercedes dealer, and like a G-Wagon to me is like a scatter graph. One day it's worth 40 grand over retail, the next day it's worth 100 grand under. I mean, I don't know, I don't understand the rationale, but these guys have they know what's going on by the minute. Where our data is seat of the pants, we think it'll sell for this, we got to put 20 grand in it to make it sell for that. It's just it's a little more difficult. So I'd rather see things get tighter, that we all do business here versus this big swap.
Is there general consensus on that? So instead of, I think most manufacturers are 35 to 45% spread between dealer net and MSRP. You'd like to see that tighter. Is there consensus on what that number could be?
Yeah, I think the concern's always been is you make that number smaller, it takes our trade allowance away. But again, if we fix trade allowance so it's consistent, I think we can make that tighter. Because I think you go buy a car today, and again, I apologize for keep bringing up automotive world, but I just think what I see it listed for is probably about what I'm going to pay. And I expect that. Maybe a little bit off, but not much. In our world, it's so massive, you have no idea. And so, yeah, I think if we shrink it that without fixing the other, we may cause a problem. But I agree. To get it at MSRP is a transaction price, potentially.
we were talking about pricing, just recently, and in doing so, one of the things that has happened over the last 5 years since COVID, and you had mentioned about the selling environment then, our pricing has gone up another third at the retail level for the goods that we're paying, the same goods that we're paying for. And so there is a little bit of sticker shock that we're working with. And if the answer is MSRP adjustments to get us there, I don't know if that's the answer as much as, we're seeing some builders come out with new models to replace the old models to justify the pricing, and trying to come up with other concepts to work with and strategies to work with. We've got different propulsion today than what we had back then, but we're still dealing with a sticker shock syndrome that's happening right now, where people come up and they're looking at a boat that was, a third of the price less, and they thought they could still get it at that price, and now it's out of their budget, and they're forced to look at pre-owned, or they're forced to look down, and they're not happy. And there's got to be some kind of and maybe the NMMA has some answers to that in terms of, we're not talking about price fixing, we're simply talking about trying to bring down pricing to where boating's affordable. I mean, because it doesn't matter whether you look at the boat, the slip, the service, insurance, all of the things that go into it.
Darren, I agree 100%.
To Darren's point, and one thing that Wells brought up, it was interesting. If you think about that third, your floor plan, you have the same amount of boats in inventory, same amount of boats, but your floor plan's up 30%. You guys are tapped out. You're just tapped out of floor plan.
And we're paying the higher interest charges.
You haven't
Rates aren't coming down.
you haven't expanded your company or your product line. You're not buying any more boats. You're just 30% more. So.
We are for sure out of whack pricing wise. Our industry has experienced triple the inflation that the national statistics show. Our selling prices collectively as an industry are 45% higher than they were in 2022, and the average consumer's buying power with his paycheck is probably up 20%. So there's a value mismatch right now that we have to work our way through, which was my first question. Because of the spread between dealer net and MSRP, what used to sell for 300 grand is now 450. And it's a different buyer, the air is thinner there, and then it's compounded by the big spread between dealer net and MSRP. And if we're willing to sell at 17 off at a boat show, maybe we should be lowering those spreads a little bit, just try to make sure our dealer gets a net back with that customer, as opposed to the online shopper concluding that he can't afford it. The $70,000 pontoon is now a $100,000 pontoon. But the customer doesn't know he could buy it all day long for 85 and have a happy dealer and a satisfied customer. So my fear is, how many customers are we losing that don't have 100 grand for a pontoon that might have 85 or 82?
Well, that's where the used boat market comes into play. I mean, that's something that we as a dealer body have to continue to do, is work with our customers to keep their boats up as much as possible and not have deferred maintenance, not have the problems with the product, so that when we take it back to market, that's one of the biggest challenges with the trade right now, is putting a trade onto the market and having to do 10% or 15% refit value to get that boat back out there the way a customer expects it. And you have to do it, or it's going to come back, and it's going to come back on you.
And actually building a boat for resale. When you build a boat with a client, we had a situation recently where a client put a seakeeper and all sorts of options, and he lost substantial money in a year and a half, 20%. And then we had to take that boat back in on trade. So build the boat right, build it for the client, but build it for resale at the same time. Super important.
That's an excellent point, Kim. Building the boat for resale. So guiding the customer as he's speccing the boat, so he has the right power on it and that doesn't go over the
Most
top.
likely you're going to have to take it back in on trade.
Yeah. Shifting gears. Eddie, how's the role of your showroom changed over the last 10 years?
Well, I would say 90% of our showroom is online now. It really, we put a big effort into what we're doing online from imagery standpoint, details, data, etc. being in a busy retail environment is phenomenal, but not all of us can be blessed with a main street around other car dealers, RV dealers. But if not, really the internet is your showroom. And again, that kind of goes back to the field inventory and so forth, and where do you put boats on your property and how do you show them, and we haven't even talked about seasonal stuff that I've been out of touch with for the last 10 years as well. You know, so going into winter and so forth, and how you manage that. But the showrooms, you know, those moments of truth, it's still an emotional product. You mentioned at the very beginning, none of us need boats. It's something that we aspire to have. It's what we want. So when there is product in front of people, we're at the biggest mall here in town with product. It's expensive to be there. But yesterday we had a guest come in. We never spoke to him before, and they bought a $125,000 boat from us, like in an hour. So you know, we have an 18-footer in the mall, and so
Is that manned by somebody?
about 80% of the time the mall's open, we're manned.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you have a salesperson standing there next
we
to one.
brought in half a dozen interns over the last 18 months. It's part of their training program, just meeting and greeting people at the mall. So and really, the Viage Group started in a mall, so it's a proven strategy for us. And that to me is, we still need to get product out, and we might talk about boat shows, but I mean our calendar all year long is full of music on Main, events, you know, chili cook-offs. I mean, we go to as much stuff as we possibly can, and it's still fruitful for us to be there and meet new people. And hey, I've always dreamed of having one, and the conversation starts.
Yeah, you got to do sea trials events. You got to do VIPs. You got to do the yacht clubs. You got to do everything that you can to get in front of people that you're not in front of on the web, on the internet or website, or even at boat shows.
Let's talk about boat shows. Attendance peaked at boat shows in 2019, and it's gone down consistently. There was a little bit of a COVID bump, but not much. But if you take the COVID bump out, 6 years in a row, attendance down. What's the future for boat shows as part of the mix?
I think it's still part of our business. One of my favorite shows I'd go to was the Minneapolis Boat Show in January. And you go there, the doors open, it smells like resin, and you can see these people, like their faces light up, that there's gonna be an end of winter. So I mean, to me, and as a kid going to the New York Boat Show in the 60s, I mean, it still works, it's still an event. I think it needs to be relevant. I think costs have gotten crazy. I think some markets, specifically our market on the west coast of Florida, is saturated with boat shows. Good for some, not great for all, but I still think it's an element of the business. I think a lot of times our OEMs, they totally focus on boat shows from a Dade and Brouwer County standpoint, or Palm Beach County now, and I think there's maybe too much emphasis on those shows for if you're not in that market. I mean, they're good for us. We had a great Fort Lauderdale show, but still there's so much effort and money put in those boat shows. I think we can do better regionally in some cases.
And builder displays are very important right now in the boat shows, and that's something to get your guests there and get them to see the different products that are available. But to Ed's point, we've got to find a way to get more people out to the normal boat shows. We're competing against everything from, this time of year. We used to have a boat show in St. Pete. We were fighting the Christmas parade. Now we're fighting the RV program here in January. There's a lot of other variables there that come into play for local events. But the boat shows are a necessity, because that's where people go prospect and find out what they want, and we got to put our best foot forward. The unfortunate thing about it is the cost value proposition is dwindling as what it costs for us to get product there, have it on display, and the display cost.
So what I'm hearing is shows are here to stay, but perhaps you might not be taking the whole product line to the show. You may be skinnying down your display in order to be there to meet customers, but not having the breadth of product.
And use the builder displays to supplement that.
Yeah, we got to a point, I don't know what it was, 15 years ago maybe, we were getting really, frustrated with shows, lack of leads, lack of sales, and we were about to maybe put some more like boutique displays in boat shows, have a presence but minimal. And then there was a study that came out at the time from a group that did a study in North America, and they found that 80% of our leads for the year come from shows. And it was accurate data, which got us committed to like, okay, we got to be at the shows, but are we doing the show correctly? But I think you hit on it, it varies by market. And like Florida, I think you can go to a boat show every weekend. And I think the only people making money at half of these shows are the show promoter. And it's frustrating, and I think half of the dealers go there because they're worried if they don't, and it's so wrong. I think if we can get to relevant shows that, aren't competing with Super Bowls and some of this other stuff, and that they're really there to serve the customer, and manufacturer dealers, not the promoter. But I feel half the shows out there, only person wins is the promoter. And I'm sorry if I sound really sour about some of the promoters, if any of you guys are promoters, but there's just some bad ones out there. Then there's some other ones that are amazing. Like we work with a company called ShowSpan, unbelievable show promoter, how well they do, and their shows show for it. So yeah, I think shows are here to stay, but they do take a lot of our revenue, and the question is, are there other marketing avenues that we could use if we could pare down some of these shows maybe?
I think shows are also a way to market, build relationships. I know Valhalla won, what did you win? You voted the year? Sure. And so reserve your launches for the show and ride Fox News and all the media that's there. Focus on marketing, hype up before the show, giveaways at the show, and use it to build relationships with the people that are at the factory that don't really get out of the factory. Get them to the show, meet your clients, and build that retention of the show. And then the sales happen pretty much there and a lot thereafter.
Kim, one of the questions you wanted to talk about, how can dealers collaborate better with their manufacturers to ensure we deliver a consistent customer ownership experience?
Yeah, it's been a big thing with our manufacturers. We have to communicate more. The pick lists that we do, the QC at the dealership has to get back to the manufacturer so that we make boats better. Clients are frustrated with quality controls being pushed to the dealership level. We're seeing that a lot, so we're trying to improve the processes back to the manufacturer. This is what you need to do better, and really just listen to the client. Better communication. We have a new customer experience manager at our dealership. She's been there for, I don't know how many years, Lisa, 10 years. And it's something that we study customer experience at every touch point of the dealership and then take that back to the manufacturer. Whether it's warranty, whether it's parts, service. Service, is great, but parts, I can't get a hold of this manufacturer, can you help me? So all that information has to get back to the manufacturer. So communication is key. And then most importantly is we all have territories, which I just don't understand why we have territories. You should be allowed to buy a boat anywhere in the world from anyone. It bothers me. But the fact that all of the dealers now, especially under a contender, we all now get together and help sell each other's inventory. What do you have? What do you have? What do you have? And then it's now part of our inventory spreadsheet, so that we're helping each other, sell each other's, stuff, which is great. But teamwork, collaboration, partnership, super important. Getting all that information back to the manufacturer. But if a client says, "This is what I want on a boat. I need something that makes me, taller," or "This is too windy," get that information back to the manufacturer and research and development. We're working with Auto Captain right now with the Navigo Group, bringing that into contenders. So we're trying to break down the barriers of boating with women and inexperienced boaters. And Brunswick is now meeting with us to talk about how do we make boating accessible, easier, safer. And so, it has to be that partnership between the dealer and the manufacturer.
I want to just ask you to expand for a second on the idea of no dealer territories, no areas of primary responsibility. I always thought that having retail sales that are close to the dealership is highly correlated with customer satisfaction. And the flip side of that is boat sales that occur far from the dealership can often result in bad customer satisfaction. So if we were to get rid of them, and our company has them, I know many manufacturers have, and we don't call them a territory, we call it an APR, an area of primary responsibility. If we were to get rid of that, how would that look? Like, what would that look like? What do you guys think?
Well, we talked about it. We talked about how Hatteras, I believe, has something like that.
One of my business partner and I at one point had Hatteras under contract. And one of the things that Hatteras did, this was probably 2012, they sold to the dealer at less 15% off of MSRP. And then wherever that boat wound up, the dealer in that area got the other 15% from the factory. So there was two parts to the discount structure. One was a sales opportunity, and the other was a service opportunity. So if you had dealers all around the country, they automatically worked together because they both were going to get paid. I thought that was a very innovative idea. I didn't have the nerve to implement that myself at our company, but I thought it was a unique approach to that problem. Also, it was a big company that sold a small number of very expensive boats, as opposed to our company, which is a medium number of less expensive boats. Still expensive, but not at that price point.
I think, Steve, the challenge with like getting rid of APRs and stuff like that is the warranty process and the repair process. So that customer shows up at your door, bought the boat in Ohio, and they're on the water, on a lift, and they expect the local dealer to go out there and take care of the boat. The manufacturers are going to pay X, Mercury or Yamaha is going to pay Y, Volvo or whoever. It's if there is a shared gross profit opportunity, I'm not sure that completely works, but if there was, then maybe you could execute upon it. But again, going back to auto, Reynolds and Reynolds has really kind of taken the whole channel, right? They've gone from, or whoever is today, ADP, whoever owns them, but they've taken from the bill of materials all the way to the consumer. So work orders, repair orders, warranties, parts availability, we're still like dealing with Garmin and these guys and those guys. And so it in theory, it's a great idea. Practicality, I'm not sure we can make it pencil how the business is structured today from a partnership with our OEMs and so forth. To get warranty reimbursement, get drive time, or...
And that's the other part of the equation. How many customers really read the warranty? How many know that diagnostic travel and the freight to bring the part in and freight it back out for the swap are going to get reimbursed? They don't. Most of the time the dealer's expected to eat that. And so if you don't make enough on the front end,
You've been paying it.
well, and generously so, but in some cases that's not taken care of, especially in dealing with some of the other vendors. So the bottom line is we're dealing with outside cost to take care of a customer with a new boat that has zero cost expectations. And that's not a fight I want to be in. I'd rather fight that fight with my customer who bought the boat through me
Yes.
and paid their ticket to ride the ride.
But I did appreciate the point that Kim made, and I know about dealers working together to sell each other's inventory. I was really impressed. I never told you this. Eddie's our dealer on the west coast of Florida. I was really impressed that a dealer in Fort Lauderdale of our product, you owned the boat at the show and you sold it to him at DealerNet. And I thought that, and he told me that you and his company had this, you're a Scout dealer and a Chris Craft dealer. You sell each other's inventory to each other at cost, and I thought that is brilliant. And if all of our dealers could have that philosophy, that'd be pretty cool.
Almost all our brands, we share inventory. We actually have it published and shared amongst everyone.
At DealerNet.
At whatever we can agree to. We have a
Okay.
different program with a couple of others, but it's seamless.
Okay.
It's transparent to the consumer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, my concern would be just the customer experience is everything. It's the future of our industry, and In certain situations, we'll give out loaner boats, say your boat's down, it's a holiday, you got a party planned, whatever. I just don't see that happening. I put it this way, we're not gonna do that to customers that have bought their boats 2 states away when we can hardly take care of the customers that are buying boats from us, right? So if there's a different matrix to like how the revenue is shared, that could certainly change that. But I think if the dealer is a 5-star dealer delivering exceptional customer experiences after the sale, they shouldn't want to buy a boat 2 states away either. And that's probably back more on the manufacturer side, making sure their dealers are living up to expectations. But I think to really give a 5-star experience, typically it comes from the dealer that's sold the boat. And it's hard to do that multiple states away.
But you also don't want to lose the customer to another brand. And we've experienced that where there's not a lot of inventory out there, but we're heavy or that one's not. So it's really just me picking up the phone and talking to all of you and saying, you know, hey, this is a client. They're not in my state, but my social platform drew them to us, but let's work this out. And that's what it's all about. It's the client we have to be focused on and delivering that and sharing in the profit.
I have one more question to ask, but before we're running short of time, before I do it, I just wondered, any questions in the audience that you'd like to ask these legendary dealer operators here? Sir. Do we have someone with a mic?
I'm pretty loud if I need to be.
Stand up.
So, unique situation, but jumping back to your guys' first point you made, how do you deal in, thank you. All right, I'll just start over here. Jumping back to your first point about trade-in value and that in selling a boat. I'm a former Evan & Johnson dealer, still am for parts, service, and warranty, and there's not very many of us left. How do you deal with a situation like that where the value of the actual boat privately and to resell it is virtually nil? So short of putting a repower on that boat, like I'm not selling the customer a new boat. He's either repowering what he's got or he's out of the market entirely. How's that something you manage kind of going forward?
Jerry?
Okay, I'll try to hit that one. Yeah, so we do have that happen. We just had some people want to trade a couple boats in that there's 18 of them sold in the whole country. We feel the boat has zero value. And then on top of it, the boat had major structural issues. And then trying to sit down with that customer exactly in your situation. Hey, you got an engine that I can't get parts for. It's no longer in production. And it's, you know, I think it's Marcus again that says, you know, tell them up front, hey, I got bad news for you, but you're not going to get much for this. And I'm sorry to present this to you, but it's the situation. And you, obviously when you bought it, you didn't know this was going to happen. But you get people that think they saved money and bought, you know, a white elephant, and then now it's worth nothing. And I think it's just being honest, and we'll try to, you know, maybe tell them, hey, let's put this to auction, put it on Facebook Marketplace. Let's try different methods to dump this inventory because it really has no value. It's just being honest.
Eddie and Darren, you both have built phenomenally successful businesses, and just coincidentally in the last 6 months have sold them to your employees, and yet you continue to run them for now. Would love just to hear the thought process of what went through that decision. And Darren, if you want to go first, you run a 3rd generation huge dealership, the decision making and the process, and now the employees owning the company. Please explain.
It's quite an undertaking, and Eddie can attest to that. After 2.5 years of researching different ways to come up with a strategy that provided the recognition for those that gave us their lives for 15, 20, 30 years. How do you give back to them fairly in terms of a sale of your business? As you know, most of the times you sell your business, there's somebody sitting there that's making judgment based on profitability and based on so many other aspects of that business, and it really devalues the employee. For us, it's everything about the employee. When you walk into our Anna Maria location, every placard that was ever given to one of our employees that's 15 years or higher is across the top of that foyer, and it's big. And we always give one to the employee and one to the wall. And it's a hall of fame for people that have been in the industry. And we could not find a solution other than an ESOP to continue that family experience, but also that employee engagement that we needed to continue to keep Galati going at the rate and pace that we desire to. Because now it's up to them to take this business the next direction. We're all business partners now, but we're very much family. And we actually came up with our marketing team, we're family founded and employee owned. And it was a great process. The Galatis were amazingly fair because they could have sold out at a much higher number, but at the same time, now everybody there and going forward is going to have a bite at the apple and have something to show for it at the end when everything is settled and debt's paid off and the business continues to grow and move forward. It's an amazing way of giving back and rewarding those that gave everything to you.
Great. Eddie. Yeah. Yeah. Both companies, just coincidentally. Eddie.
Yeah, Steve, thanks. So I was blessed to be involved with 28 acquisitions in my career with another company. And I was actually the guy that got it after it was acquired. And nothing's going to change. All the systems are going to stay the same. Culture's going to be the same. And that lasted.
The MarineMax roll-up is what he's talking about.
It lasted about 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, key people start leaving. Pay plans get changed. Founders start leaving. OEMs aren't happy in that market anymore because of the strategies aren't aligned. And MarineMax is a phenomenal company, so don't get me wrong, it's a great company. So when we started Viage Group, it was really set up to be an ESOP. I just didn't know it. And we refer to everybody in our company as partners. We profit share with everybody in the company, all the way down to the guys and girls that drive trucks and so forth. So on a monthly basis, they all see how the company performs. This is all before the ESOP. And just to me, simply over the years, how you talk to a person, what you call them, how you care for them, look after them and so forth, that's kind of created our culture. And we're a small group, but they do large things as a team. So we were approached by a European boat company that we do not do business with about acquiring us about a year and a half ago. Went through a pretty large due diligence with them, and as we got closer and closer to that opportunity, it started smelling like my past a little bit, about nothing's going to change. Well, maybe just a little. The comp plans for your team, they seem a little aggressive for the Europeans, and that was enough said for me. And I was introduced to an investment banker, a retired investment banker who just went to work for the largest ESOP company in the country. And the more I learned in this initial discussion on how it works, what it's all about, what it does for the team long term, what it does for succession, it was like, well, that's what I wanted to do. I just didn't know if that's the vehicle or the instrument I needed to use to do it. So we closed in April with our team. It's been fantastic, I will say. When you close, everybody's high-fiving. Reality sets in a week later, and you might get some elbowing and some moving around, but still today, it's fantastic. We started our journey, as the industry was here, and it's kind of gone downhill a bit, so that's harder work on us. But it does give me the ability to focus on more strategic things in our company, spend more time developing people, recruiting people, because I was very, very tactical the first 10 or 11 years of our company when we started it. But happy to talk to anybody about it. I highly recommend it. Not that acquisition might not make sense for somebody. It does not seem like the acquisition programs out there that heavy right now. I think OEMs support our strategy. They like to see existing management stay in place. They like to see the existing team and not a lot of change and dysfunction, or disruption, I should say is a better word. So, but I have not looked back, and I'm proud and excited for what we've done for our team. So
thank you both for sharing that. Jerry, I know wasn't on my questions list, but you sold out to a very classy organization as well. Kind of took a different tact. You want to say a few words about that?
Sure. We also looked at ESOP, put a lot of time into it. I think a lot of ESOPs, our government thinks a lot of ESOPs, it's very tax friendly. We had no plan to do anything. We served a very high level family for like 25 years, and they approached us one day and said, hey, we'd like to acquire you. And so, well, we're not up for sale. And then my wife said, I think you need to talk to him. And so I did, and I talked to him for over a year, and I started to realize this was after I spent 6 months to a year working on an ESOP. And again, both directions really good. I knew the kind of company we built, which very much mirrors what you explained, and that's what we try to work on every day, is taking care of our people. And I found out from talking to this family that they're hands off and they're like a silent investor, and they only invest in things that are well run and that they believe in, and quickly learned that they're not investing in the business, they're investing in the people. And I told them I wasn't ready to sell out, but I was willing to sell a portion of the business. And it grew over time as my confidence grew. But so yeah, I still kept a meaningful piece, but it's been great. It's been almost 3 years, and I have zero regrets. Nothing's really, everything's still in place. And I would say they're just a good silent partners. So
Awesome, awesome. Well, I want to thank you all for sharing your insights. These are difficult questions, and I think reflect many of the things that we all think about every day as we think about what's challenging in our industry and how we can get to the next level and what's happening with consumers around us. So thank you all for being here today and